I hadn't intended on doing another stream, or rather a stream at all today. But we just had this breaking news and I thought it was too significant to ignore or put off until tomorrow. Uh, the older Bush is dead, 94. Happened apparently a few hours ago. Within the last hour, they announced it. Um, it's really one of those things where I don't typically get bothered by celebrity deaths because most people appear in a movie and, oh, that person was really talented. But a lot of times we have this thing in the US where we give um, people who hold office this praise for just simply being an office holder. And a lot of times I've had to push back against that by saying, no, that person doesn't do anything courageous. They're just following along with their party. They're just, going along with the flow. But the older Bush was the antithesis of that. And that's a quality his son doesn't have. That's a quality Obama and Clinton don't have. It's a quality that Trump doesn't have. Um, because when you are in a party full of climate change deniers and you sign environmental laws, you ban assault rifles while they're bucking for the NRA. Those are things that most people in that position, from especially in this modern era, have shown themselves unable to do. I don't even know how to start this. Maybe I should talk about his past or his beginnings. So he was born in 1924, served in World War II. Um, his 18th birthday, enlisted. He was able to graduate from college faster than usual. He had an accelerated program. Um, what's the order of his career? I know he was direct. He was the only president to be CIA director, and that was during Carter's tenure in the White House. Um, he ran for Senate but lost to Lloyd Benson, which is significant because Benson later was picked by Michael Dukakis for the 1988 Democratic ticket, which ran against Bush and Quayle. So they had a rematch 20 plus years later just by happenstance. Um, he was ambassador to China, UN ambassador, and then ran for president. Well, not then ran for president, but this is the order. Also, it's worth noting his dad was senator um, from what state was that? I think Connecticut. Prescott Bush. He was also one thing to note is that he was in the Senate with Al Gore Sr., so the father of Al Gore. So they were so when you look at the 2000 election between Gore and Bush, it was the older. It was Bush's grandpa and Gore's dad that were in the Senate together 50 plus years before. I thought that was interesting. Um, so after that he runs for president. He doesn't make it. He becomes Reagan's running mate, and he's picked over people like Jesse Helms, for example, who it could be argued catapulted Reagan to even being able to be taken seriously for another go around after losing the Ford or whatever. So he, in his 8 year capacity, has two times where he's the acting president. It's when Reagan is shot the first time in 81, or rather the only time in 81, and then also when Reagan had this surgery, which I think is during the second term. Um, so then he runs for president and pretty much is easily able to clinch the nomination this time around. Notably, Reagan said he would, do everything he could to get him elected, and then played a really minor role in this campaign. He's the most recent president to get a landslide, the majority of the popular vote to carry, I think 40 plus states. So he just wiped Dukakis clean. He vanquished him. But during his 4 years, you have significant foreign policy events. You have the fall of the Soviet Union. The Berlin Wall goes down as well. Um, the START, not START treaty, but there's those two things in particular. The environmental laws, as I mentioned earlier, the ban on assault rifles, which caused him to lose his support from the NRA. Um, and these are things that I don't see when they talk about political courage or courageousness. it just isn't in these modern presidents. And I've made that pretty clear on this channel that this is not the bootlick for Democrats or Republicans page, but I firmly believe the older Bush was the last president, at least of these modern ones, that I could see someone going on the basis of saying that was a good one or a great one or anything. So what I find frustrating about his remembrance is that I truly believe if George W. did not win, or at least did not become anything further than governor of Texas, he'd be a much more liked figure. But instead, thanks to the younger Bush being one of the worst presidents in American history, people frown upon him for that. You had this woman who was happy that Barbara Bush died and talked about, oh, she raised a war criminal. And anyone who looks at that logically says to themselves, wait a second. In 2000, Bush, the younger one, George W., was in his 50s. And, over the next 8 years got into his 60s. I'm supposed to believe it's a parent's responsibility for their middle-aged son's doings as commander in chief. Does anybody believe that? I didn't think so. But that's a serious fault of just people and their refusal to really learn about individuals on a basis that's not lumping them all together. So he was one of only two living presidents I actually have any respect for. The other one's Carter. It's sad. Not necessarily dying at an old age, which should happen with everybody, but doesn't. Just the fact that he will continue to be a very maligned figure for reasons that are beyond his control. People see him as Reagan's lesser than equal successor, or the lesser significant of the two Bushes. And it is true he is not as significant as his son, but being important, or rather doing things that mattered more in the long run, is not always a good thing. I would, if you told me would I rather have the older Bush's record, which a lot of people see as kind of, oh, he was all right, versus the disastrous record of his son, I'd pick the former. So people just they don't think about this stuff critically, and that's why we're going to keep having what we've had now, which is this whole thing of, yeah, Bush was terrible, Bush was horrible, the Bushes were awful. Can anyone actually talk about what the older Bush did? Are they just lumping him in with his son? I didn't think so. I will say that probably what I find what should be significant is the American with Disabilities Act, because, again, politicians now, and in particular Republicans, talk a lot of game about mental illness when we have these shootings, but they never sign anything in the law. What has Trump signed? And that's not just him, that's other members of his party, but you get the picture. It's only discussed when they can use it as the reason for a shooting happening other than the weapons themselves. And Bush didn't just sit around and talk. He actually signed a law. He got with the Democratic Congress and decided to work with them over that. And this is really sad because he's really his tenure in office is the end of the era where people actually worked together and weren't just trying to screw you over until their party could get in control, which is really frustrating because now it means whenever we don't have a president with a controlled Congress, they're just going to keep jockeying for the next 4 years until they can have a chance at kicking you out of the White House. So I will say, other than this relation with his son, which he couldn't do anything about, that was his son. He's supposed to disown him now. The other part is these allegations that came out late last year. I've talked about being against, or rather kind of having a negative opinion of Me Too, because why would it take you 30, and not even 30 years, but think about this. This 90-plus-year-old man had like so much strength that he was able to just grab these women. Do you believe that? I don't. Sorry. Or rather not sorry, but that's what I'm talking about, where that and the relation to George W. are going to be the main reasons people look at him negatively. It's not going to be because of what was done in office. He's actually the last president who I give credit for being able to start wars that ended. You know, you got the Gulf War, and a lot of people object to the point of that, but he was a diplomat in the sense that he was able to get, I think it was over 30 countries together to just go against Saddam Hussein. So that when, Saddam is going over in his little jet tank thing, all these countries are pushing down on him. And that's all the older Bush is doing. And that's something a lot of these modern presidents don't seem to want to do, which we know the reason for. It's the military industrial complex. They're paid to stay in those conflicts. But that was something he could have dragged out that he didn't. There was a set start date and a set end date. And that was also an issue where Americans at the time reflected on him positively because his approval rating went into the 80s. And so that's why they thought leading up to the 92 re-election campaign, oh, there's no way he's going to lose. That's what they thought. Of course, we saw what happened with, Ross Perot and splitting the vote and Clinton being able to hold on to his base or the Democratic base. So it's just part of the territory. So if anyone has anything to say, let me know. If you don't, we can pretty much end this. I think I've talked about his record. I encourage people to go and look this stuff up whenever they're able to. And I'm tired of how, we have this thing where due to the era of technological laziness, a lot of people will continue to say, oh, I don't like George W. So that means I don't like George H.W. And, when you think about things logically, you would say to yourself, well, these are two different people that happen to be related. So surely there's some difference in their governing. And I've seen that kind of mindset be applied to other father-son, I guess, dynasties. Like if you look at Ron and Rand Paul, a lot more people tend to say Ron is more moderate than Rand. So they're able to objectively say these two people are related to each other, but one of them is different, which depending on your own political identity is a good or bad thing, how different they are from each other. But I don't see that same level of critical thought being applied to the Bushes. And it really shows you why we need to, I guess, reinstate. There just has to be something where we start looking at individual policies. The Americans with Disabilities Act is something good to be remembered by, and is something that should be thought of and figured out. And also being able to start wars that end is something to be credited with. People like to focus on the Iran-Contra affair, and they talk about that a good chunk of it. Actual things that he was able to do, I feel, are significant. I've tried to give credit to a lot of different people in office for doing one or two good things that are usually overlapping of a lot of their critiques, and it doesn't seem like he had a whole bunch of them. It just seems like at this point we have a lot of people who don't see a necessity in going and looking up what he actually did in office, and so he's paying the consequence for that with his approval rating among the popular image versus the scholars who take the time to go and read the stuff and check it out. I don't consider myself one necessarily, but I do think if you weigh the good and bad between him, his son, Obama, Clinton, and Trump, he's the best, or at least was the best. And I really hope that if we do have to have Republicans in office again that are conservative and tend to have a leaning that is toward playing for both sides, we get someone like him because he saw problems and he addressed them adequately. He didn't sit over there and run his mouth. Again, he banned assault rifles. Could you imagine Trump doing that today? I can't. Or any of the other Republicans. They don't have the courage he has, and that's why members of his own party won't talk about him. I did not know that, Ventry. Or Ventrise, if I'm saying your name correctly. Also, I've never seen you before, so you'll probably show up for this one stream. We have a little joke where Somebody will show up for one stream and they just disappear. They just evaporate. It's like, where'd they go? I don't know. But yeah, he was. So his only two election losses were to Benson, and then when he ran for the presidency the first time in 1980. Other than that, he won. Oh, and 92, obviously. So other than those three, he was able to win these elections. It's just funny how like him and Trump. The more I think about the fact that he died under like while Trump was in office, they're so different, even though they're from the same party. Like even just if you put their resumes together, first one with no government or military experience versus a man who was in the military and performed very admirably, and also had loads of government experience, UN ambassador, CIA director, ambassador to China, vice president, but congressman too, I think. Let me see. Yeah, but I haven't. Yeah, I have not. I promise I'll be back. But when you think of those two, and just it really shows you how different politics 20 years ago is from now, where you had to have all this experience or at least have some level of experience, and then now it's just and anyone can jump in as long as they have money. Which I'm going to get into a rant about Citizens United and the need for public financing of elections and our system being bought out by the rich, and corporations. But that's a story for another day. Um, what else can I throw in here? Let's see, OG 509 says nice. Never seen you before either, OG. You're the original 509. What happened to the person with the username 509? There's got to be someone else out there with that same name except with the OG removed. It was just yanked. But yeah, I really wanted to, because I remember I read an article where he said he wanted to live until he was 100. So I really wanted that to happen, and it just didn't. I guess a lot of times when you don't hear that someone's health is waning or that they're you know on their last leg or whatever, it comes off as unexpected. Like I remember in the months leading up to McCain's death, uh, they would sit there and they would say, "Oh, this is update. He's worsening, whatever." So that when it came, you had some kind of premonition about it. And for months, we just didn't hear anything about him, at least as far as his health was concerned, relating to Bush 41. I know, Ruben. I try to keep up with my various celebrity turned politicians, even though a lot of times I just think because they're famous they get in office. Like in my own state, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the only reason he was governor was because people wanted to know what it would be like to have the Terminator as governor. He had no policies that anyone was excited to see implemented. What else there was something else Bush did that I really liked. See if I can find it. I know the Civil Rights Act of '91 was like really, really watered down. um, okay, you have Points of Light. That's one of them, but it's not the only one. And it was this thing where they were going to solve problems through voluntary service. I really, nice little, call to do stuff. But there's something in here. There's another law he signed I thought was really good. See if I can find it. What am I correct on, Ruben? Please notify me. Let's see here. Yeah, I'd like for you to tell me what I'm accurate on. This has been I'm telling you, these last 2 years have resulted in the deaths of so many people I actually like and care about in some way that is not usual for me and people I don't know. It sucks, man. Oh, the START 1 and the START 2 treaties. Okay, those are good. And I gave, and again, I'm saying this as someone who's not a fan of Trump. I gave him credit for the summit with North Korea. So I don't care who is in office as long as they're for peace or trying to stop a conflict. It's it's good on my end. Oh yeah, Ruben. Well, if I put out 3 albums and they sell 1 million copies, I could run for governor tomorrow. My chances of winning are increased by like 50 or 60% already. Not even, again, not because you could even make the argument it wouldn't even be because of name recognition, just money. Because people, well, yeah, they would know who I am, and then they would also donate. But you would have some yourself as well. Just to have your name out there. But yeah, anytime you have a treaty, I love that stuff. Okay, invasion of Panama. Where is it? There's one in here. It was a law. I think I found it. Okay, the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act. I love this because it stipulates that, let me see, criminal penalties for violations of the provisions. Come on, where is it? Let me see this. Okay, yeah, Bush said it had new criminal penalties against those who would employ or contribute to the dangerous proliferation of biological weapons. Um, yeah, this is good. That was another, and just like any good law, it's been screwed with and toyed with and played with since it was signed. But again, more stuff that was done that if you go to his successors, especially the newest administration, it seems like they never do anything. And a lot of times people will say that, these presidents, for example, they don't want to work with the other party, or that Congress is the reason they can't get anything done. I don't think that's the case. If you look at the 115th Congress, Republicans had the mindset of, okay, well, we have the majority, so screw the Democrats. Don't nothing. We don't care. And I actually have to go right now, so I want to thank Ruben for showing up. OG, Ventries, again, best president out of the last 5, probably better than most of them. And I really hope that you guys will take the time to look this stuff up, give his career a check. So thank you.